Therefore, I, along with my teammate today, strongly propose and reiterate the statement that the emergency period in India, which was proclaimed by Indira Gandhi, was, is, and shall always remain as the darkest period in Indian democracy.
Taking this time, I want to discuss one of the contentious period in Indian history, which is often criticized and considered as one of the darkest period in Indian democracy, the emergency of 1975 to 1977. Well, often people say that this period is often criticized as the darkest democracy in Indian history. As I stand here today, I want to argue that the emergency of this period needs to be condemned into retrospect, and it is necessary to understand the turbulent circumstances that led to the declaration of this emergency. The emergency of 1975 is petitions and to know that the country faced economic hardship, and the following war with Pakistan led to economic hardship, unemployment rate, and the crisis of oil crisis, which has blunted. The nation was teetering into a brink of chaos. The opposition leader led by Jaya Prakash Narayan was not just holding the government, he was also subverting the democratic elected leader. Also, the hardship faced by the country is also often criticized by the people during the emergency. And also, during this emergency, the 42 Amendment was enacted. The word secularism and socialism was also enacted. And these powerful words, we can see how the current government is trying to remove these two words, the RSS party and the current government. We can also see that these two words is a hamper to the Indian democracy, is a vital role which plays in our Indian democracy. And I want to argue that the declaration of emergency was a necessary and crucial step. Thank you.
On the midnight of June 25, 1975, democracy in India was not just suspended, it was strangled. The then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi imposed emergency under Article 352, sealing internal disturbance. But let us not be fooled. This was not to protect the nation, it was to protest her possessions after the Allahabad High Court invaded her election. What followed was nothing short of authoritarian rules. Parliament was reduced to rubber stamp. The constitution was amended recklessly. Most tragically, the fundamental rights of citizens were suspended. Articles 19, the right to freedom of speech and expression, was crushed. Newspapers were censored, opposition leaders were jailed without trial, and citizens lost the right to even move court for the protection of their rights. Over 1 lakh were arrested, including prominent leaders like Jaya Prakash Narayan, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Morarji Desai, and L.K. Advani without any charge. Sometimes I wonder, how does a democracy die? Is it because when the people's voices are being shut down, or is it because when the news are being heightened? And that's what exactly happened during the emergency period in 1975. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, today I stand here not to argue, but to remember, to reflect, and most importantly, to remind. Because what happened during the emergency period in 1975 wasn't just a chapter in our textbook, it was the very scar on the face of the Indian democracy. What happened during that period? When the constitution, the supreme law which was meant to protect the people, was used as a weapon to silence the people. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start with a simple question. I would like all of you to imagine, friends, judges, my devoted opponents, imagine what must it feel like to wake up in your own country and realize you no longer have the right to speak, you no longer have the right to protest, not because you made a mistake, but because you are there not to ask a question. Friends, imagine what must it feel like to be in a protest and never return home, to be in a jail, not because you broke the law, but because you dare to ask the question to the government. Imagine being a mother and your son is taken by the police, not because he made a mistake. He was arrested without any trial, no warrant, no courts.
Imagine being a student with full of leadership qualities, where your college becomes a cage, where even thinking aloud becomes dangerous. Imagine being poor and standing in the line and waiting for a ration, and you know what they tell you? No food, because you have to be sterilized. Is this the emergency period that we are trying to defend? Well, much has been said by our first speaker about what really happened, what was the actual reason behind the emergency about the Allahabad High Court. So let me not repeat that. I would like to argue what happened right after the emergency. There was an absolutely crushing of democracy, and in order to support my statement, in order to prove my statement, I would like to argue from four perspectives, ladies and gentlemen. The first is there was a censorship of the press. The media, which we all know, which is meant to be the fourth pillar of the democracy, was censored, was being heightened. Many media channels were blocked. Even the example could be of the Indian newspaper, the Indian Express, where editorial left were not allowed to, where editorial pages were meant to let blanks. What were they trying to hide? The second perspective would be a mass arrest without a trial. Ladies and gentlemen, more than 6.5 million were arrested without any warrant under MISA, which is known as the Maintenance of the Internal Security Act. Not only that happened, people from poor areas, rural areas were being forced without any trial. The third perspective that I would like to argue is suspension on the fundamental rights, ladies and gentlemen. Article 21, which gives the right to liberty and the right to life, which is not meant to be suspended during the emergency period, was suspended. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask the question: if a government can take away your right to life or right to dignity, are we even a citizen, or are we just a subject meant to serve some certain rulers? The last point that I would like to argue is forced sterilization. The most horrifying act which was carried out by Sanjay Gandhi. Millions and millions were forcibly sterilized. People from poor areas were captured and arrested by the police and were forced to put in vasectomy section. Therefore, I am opposing this statement, or I am opposing this spirit, not because I have personal grudges with Indira Gandhi, no. I am opposing this statement not because I hate any political party. I am opposing this statement because I love India. I believe in India, and India where truth is not hidden, where power is always accountable to its people, not to be hidden. Thank you.
And the common people had suffered. Think about it. If the common people had suffered, why did they initiate the 20-point program, the TPP, where they focus on creating better education, right? Better education, better job opportunities, and focus mainly on those rural areas. And commoners were suffering, rural people areas were suffering. Why were they suffering? Because they were doing illegal activities. They were indulging in smuggling of goods. Think about it, a government where they are hoarding all the goods. We can also take the example of Nagaland, Adyar Nagaland. I'm afraid to say it, but there are some corrupted leaders who hoard our goods. Think about it. Funds are coming for us, things are coming for us. But they are not going to the needy people. Instead, the government are just hoarding, or the corrupted leaders, they're just hoarding these goods. And the sterilization, that was given by Sanjay Gandhi. It was there from before the emergency period in 1975. It was there. It was already present in 1971, so I guess that is not relevant when we're talking about the emergency period in 1975. So our concern should be from 1975 and not from 1971. Thank you, that's all.
It's your honor, my panel of judges, my dear opponent and my beloved teammates. You talk about internal migration, which you referred 1971. 1971, there is another emergency. It's completely different. And 1975, which is completely different. There is no internal or external aggression. Why? Indira Gandhi declared 1975 emergency. It was because in June 12, 1975, Allahabad High Court nullified her election as void. That is why she took matters into her own hand and she declared emergency. And you talk about corruption. Come on, 1975 emergency. How did she declare? She deliberately took the consent of the president without letting the parliament know that emergency were to be taken place the next day. So is that corruption or not? That is completely corruption. It was in the midnight of 24 June 1975 that Mrs. Indira Gandhi took the consent of the president, but rather she ignored the parliament, in which the parliament were required to vote for the emergency. And you talk about sterilization. Yes, sterilization took place even before 1975 emergency. But use of illegal drugs to control population was started in the year 1975 by Sanjay Gandhi. Why? Why is that so? If they were to control population, why not educate the Indian citizens and let them learn family planning and birth control? Why use deliberate drugs to kill innocent child against his or her own will? As a Christian, it is against our Christian terminology. And to conclude, if a total emergency were to be declared, it should be in the year 1999, when Pakistan attacked India. But our leader handled the situation effectively, which shows that they are capable. But talking about Mrs. Indira Gandhi, it does not only show that she is selfish, but she is also an incapable leader. And I, as a person who believes in democracy, and I, as a person who lives in a democratic state, I believe in a mixed economy. And both private and public economy should coexist together. But it was in the year 1969, Mrs. Indira Gandhi nationalized 14 private banks against the industrialists, against their wishes, against their will, which shows that she is a communist in character. So, I don't think 1975 emergency has any positive impact in our society, but rather it has impacted negatively. And during 1975 emergency, 8 million innocent civilians were displaced, and 1,774 innocent civilians were killed, as according to the well-known author and lawyer Prashant Bhushan mentioned in his book, The Case That Shook India. Thank you.
Outcome. Why did they initiate the 20-point program, where they focus on providing good education, good job opportunities for the people? Why did they initiate this program? And think about it, India before 1975 was one of the most corrupted country in the world, and the crime rate was very high. Think about it. India listed at top 3 of the most highest crime rate in the world. Top 3. Think about it. So, I believe that this 1975 emergency period was necessary to bring down the crime rates. And after the 1975 emergency period, crime rates came down. Jobs, opportunities increased, employment rise, and people were provided more educational opportunities. The only people that suffered were the illegal activities, illegal people who do those wrong things. So think about it. And in my mind, I have this thought that, and I would also like to share to you that just think, if a country needs extreme results, we need extreme measures. Thank you.
Much has been talked about the emergency period in India. I along with my team has posed a lot of questions, but the irony thing is that our opposition, our motion team leader has failed to answer our questions elaborately. They were just trying to make life, just trying to find excuses. Yes, sterilization was there before 1975, but was not pressurized, but was not made compulsory or put into more legal action. And yes, talking about you declared that emergency before emergency 1975, India was one of the most corrupted country. But we rebutted the point that after emergency of 1975, Indira Gandhi made Indira Gandhi the most corrupted country in the world. Not one among, but the most corrupted country in the world. You talk about economic growth, but yet economic growth There was a 5-year plan which was started from 1970, which was taking place between 1974 to 1999. There was an agricultural revolution. It was moving from its pace, but however, how could you find excuses just because of emergency that your economy was pushing? Therefore, today, I along with my teammates strongly reiterate our statement that no matter whatsoever it may be, the emergency period in India would always and shall remain as the darkest period in Indian history. We owe the truth to the history, to the present, and to the future, and hence we must not accept that emergency was one of the darkest periods in Indian democracy. And as, like I've said, we have not given answer prior to our question, and so we are convinced that they have all agreed to us, and hence we would accept that the emergency period in India was one of the darkest periods in India. Therefore, I, along with my teammate today, strongly propose and reiterate the statement that the emergency period in India, which was proclaimed by Indira Gandhi, was, is, and shall always remain as the darkest period in Indian democracy. Thank you, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
As soon as Indira Gandhi was thrown off by the Janata Party, Indira Gandhi came back to power after 5 years. And their Janata Party could not even serve 5 years because of the poor leadership and ambitious alliance among them. And Indira Gandhi was also elected as the Prime Minister of India by the same people during the emergency. And I'm not arguing that the essence of the emergency should be denied. The forced sterilization, the detention of the fundamental right should be learned from the history. And it was imposed during a hard time, not in a peaceful time. And we do not want to see the Indian burning. That time, the state not filled with anarchy, but it was a good statement that the emergency declaration of the emergency was a crucial step and a necessary step that addresses the crisis and also fills the fundamental rights of all the people of India. Thank you.